Hello and welcome to the first part of my new series, which is all about East Anglian witchcraft and folklore. Now, any one of you who is one of my loyal subscribers will know that I normally make videos about the Anglo-Saxon runes and Anglo-Saxon life and spirituality. But another one of my great loves and passions is the folklore and the witchcraft of East Anglia. Now, I grew up in East Anglia, and ever since I was a tiny girl, the thing that I was most obsessed with was witches. In fact, every fancy dress party, I would be dressed as a witch. My great grandmother bought me a besom broom, and I would run round the yard at my parents' home, desperately trying to take off on my broomstick. It never happened, but it was a love that I never lost. Now, looking on YouTube, what became apparent to me is that most of the time, if you search YouTube for East Anglian witchcraft, you're going to find an awful lot of videos about the witch hunts of the 17th century and the Witchfinder General Matthew Hopkins. Now, that was obviously a terrible point in our history when so many innocent people were tortured and murdered. But there is so much more to East Anglia and its rich folklore and witchcraft tradition, which maybe people don't really know about. So I thought that I would just start this little series to talk to you about this and to bring some of that East Anglian magic to YouTube. So I wanted to start this series with something that I love and something that I have loved since I was a tiny girl. Stones. So let's start, shall we, and have a look at one of the magical stones of East Anglia, which is known as the Hagstone. Now, I've got one here, one of my favourite Hagstones. Isn't this beautiful? So these Hagstones, also known as holy stones or sometimes holy stones, they're formed naturally by the action of water, normally of the sea, with a small stone over time creating the hole within the stone. And as a result, one of the best places to find these beautiful stones is on the beach. Now, I actually found this one many years ago when I was on the beach at Walberswick on the Suffolk coast. I think I was in my 20s in those days, and yeah, it's beautiful, isn't it? There's something very magical about these stones. They draw people to them. Who can resist a hagstone? I know that I certainly can't. So these stones, they're considered to be protective, protecting both the home and the self. Now actually, I think if I have a look in this cupboard behind me, here we go. This one is rather special. This one is indeed rather special, and I've got it strung so that I can wear it around my neck as a protective amulet, and of course it also looks like a face. Isn't it beautiful? So these stones, they're used to protect both the self, for personal protection, and also the home. Now, this one usually sits on my windowsill and always ends up on my altar when I set one up, representing earth. Now, some people believe that the hagstone, in order to be truly effective, has to be found by the individual and not gifted, bought or bartered. So if you really want to utilise the magic of the hagstone, then you need to get out there and you need to find your own. You can even find these on gravel on a driveway. Once you get your eye in, it's amazing how easy it can be to find hagstones. Now, I also have some smaller hagstones, as you can see here, that I have hanging in my front porch to offer protection. It's quite common to hang these by an entranceway, at a door, or under the eaves of your house. Now, this one, as you can see, is on red string. Now, some people believe that for this to be truly effective and a potent protective amulet, that the thread needs to be red. Now, red thread is used on the sprite traps of East Anglia, and that's a story for another day. So there was a lady who lived in West Wickham in Cambridgeshire, and it's said that she kept a very large holy flintstone under her bed, which was said to protect her from cramps. I mean, let's face it, nobody likes leaping out of bed in the middle of the night, dancing around the bedroom because they've got cramp in their leg. So presumably this never happened to this lady because she kept the flint under her bed. And maybe, oh gosh, this is heavy. Maybe she had a flint such as this. Look at this one. Isn't it incredible? Now, I found this when I was a child on my dad's farm, and I have kept it with me ever since. It weighs about 8.4 kilograms, so it's quite a big one. Maybe bigger is better, who knows, but for some things a large hagstone such as this can be very useful to the East Anglian magical practitioner, because it can be used. If you look at a hagstone, it is effectively, it's a portal, isn't it? And so you can use hagstones for activating spell work. So if, for example, you had created an amulet or a poppet, you could pass it through the hole in the hagstone, effectively birth it into this world, activate the magic of the item that you had made. So that is one use for a hagstone. So maybe in this case bigger is better. So years ago, and possibly it still happens in some places in East Anglia, years ago people would keep a whole flintstone hanging on the stable door. Now, why did they do this, we may ask? It was due to the belief that both witches and fairies would steal horses from stables and ride them across the countryside to the point of exhaustion. Now, back in 1832, a farmer in Woodbridge was with his bailiff, who was negotiating with a butcher about the price of a calf, a poor calf. And when the animal was led in, it was obvious that the poor beast was extremely hot. So the butcher exclaimed, "The Pharisees have been here, and strews you are alive, have been riding that there poor calf all night." Now he then told the bailiff that he should get a hold stone, string it up in the calf's pen, so that when the beast stood up, the stone was suspended just slightly above his back. And he told him that that would ensure that the Pharisees were brushed off the animal's back when they attempted to take it for a run around the countryside. So Pharisees is the name used in East Anglia for the fairy folk. Now they're also sometimes called ferrishes. They can also be called ferriers, or just simply fairies. Now there is a very strong fairy tradition in East Anglia that I will talk about another day. But for now, I want to show you another type of stone. This leads us very nicely on to the next stone I want to look at. And these are called fairy loaves. Now you can see why. Now isn't that beautiful? I want to tell you a story about this little stone, because I found this stone when I would say, about 6 years old. So I didn't know what a fossil was. I had no idea what a fossil was. I was 6 years old, and I was out playing on the land. My parents had just had a bungalow built in what had been a meadow on my granddad's farm, and I was out playing on some of the rough land out there. And I can clearly remember finding this little stone, and I was so excited. I thought I had found, I thought it was a flower trapped within the stone. Because really, if you look at it, can you see it there? Maybe not. Let's try this one. There you go. That's what it looks like. A flower trapped within the stone, and I thought it was the most magical thing in the world. Now, people have thought that these are magical for a very, very long time, and in East Anglia these are known as fairy loaves. Now I've got quite a few fairy loaves because they are really very easy to find in East Anglia. There's a bigger one there, and certainly where I come from, these are kind of quite easy to find. Aren't they lovely? This is a particularly beautiful one. You can see it. They are very, very lovely little stones, and they do look like little loaves of fairy bread. Now, because of their likeness to loaves in days gone past, and sometimes still today, they were kept by the oven or by the brick bread oven to ensure that the loaves would rise and good bread would be baked. Now, it was also said that anyone who possessed these would always have bread and would never go hungry. Now, good loaves, having bread, was obviously vital to the survival of people in days gone by. And if we look at the name that the Anglo-Saxon, the people that came over, and East Anglia was one of the first areas that they settled, their name for a lord was a hlafod. and a name for his lady was Llavdia. And this is based on the word hlaf, which is the Old English name for loaf. So the Lord was effectively the guardian of the bread. You know, this shows what an importance there was on having good bread to feed the people. So very much like the Hagstone, to have one of these was considered good luck, and they were considered both good luck and also protective. Now they're sometimes called fairy loaves. Fairy is another word for fairy in East Anglia. Shepherd's crowns, and also in some places they're known as thunderstones. Now evidence suggests that these magical stones have played an important part in the spirituality of humans for a very long time. Now they've actually been found in archaeological excavations from the Paleolithic right through to Anglo-Saxon times. Now, in the 19th century, an archaeologist excavated a round barrow on the Dunstable Downs, where they found a young woman and her baby. Now the pair were encircled by at least 100 of these fairy loaves. Now these are actually, the technical term for them is echinoids, and they are the fossil of a very ancient sea urchin. So this mother and her child had been completely encircled. It was like a protective ring around them of all of these echinoids. Now Worthington George Smith, the archaeologist, wrote in his work of 1894, which was called Man, the Primeval Savage, his haunts and relics from the hilltops of Bedfordshire to Blackwall. He wrote, "Most curious of all was a large number of fossil echini from the chalk. At first 12 were detected surrounding the girl, but at last, on extending the grave, nearly 100 were found. On repeatedly shovelling and raking over the earth from the entire tumulus, 200 or more were found, and most of these undoubtedly originally belonged to the girl's grave, as none were found in other graves. 2 species were represented, one the fairy loaf, Anachites ovatus, the other the heart urchin, Meacrasta coryngium. Sorry, I don't speak very good any Latin. A single pebble of white quartz was also in the girl's grave." So we can see there that for many years, humans have placed an importance on these wonderful stones, these fairy loaves, and have considered them to be protective. So keep an eye out when you're walking around the fields of East Anglia, and you may be lucky enough to find one of these beautiful little fairy loaves. Of course, people used to believe that these were actual loaves that had been lost by the fae folk, and I guess that is quite a nice thing to believe. It's probably what I would have believed when I was a child. Anyway, I hope you have enjoyed this little look at some of the wonderful myths about these beautiful stones. Oh gosh, this is heavy. And the importance that they have to the folk in East Anglia. So, I will see you next time for some more East Anglia witchcraft and folklore. See you later. Bye.